1953 marked the 700th anniversary of the granting of the first royal charter to the borough of Bridport. And so just 3 weeks after the coronation, local people mounted their own celebration, a great pageant of the town's history. A large part of the community was involved. Bridport people acting out their own story.
Oh, I thought it was fascinating. I didn't really understand what it was all about, but it was just a sort of magical year. It sort of went on. There was a coronation, and then 3 weeks later we had the pageant, and the whole town was involved. I think that was the great thing.
The only actual rehearsal of the pageant as a whole, I remember, was the dress rehearsal. And about all I remember about that was that the weather had been pretty awful all summer up until the evening of the dress rehearsal. And then the sun broke through and it was a glorious evening and we had a wonderful week. And I remember my husband commenting that he didn't know who the clerk of the weather was, but he must be a Bridport man.
Anybody in the village, mostly women and children, I think there were a few men from Stoke Abbott, were picked up early evening, I believe it was, and we would go to Beminster. I suppose we picked people up in Beminster, but we certainly went on to Netherbury and Melplash, picking up more of what were eventually the cast. And I suppose it must have been at least 2 hours rehearsing down there. I can remember waiting till our scene was ready. We virtually all knew each other, although we were from different villages. Certainly the younger members all went to school together, and probably our parents had been at school as well. So, there were two generations, really, that knew each other.
It was way back that I heard Princess Margaret might be coming, because I was sworn to secrecy because my dad knew and wasn't meant to tell anybody. And I didn't actually, I did keep it a secret. He was on the Chamber of Trade, and also because he was a baker, I think they were all involved in organising the catering side of it all for everything. When she arrived, I don't know whether she came by train or drove, I don't know, but anyway, her first port of call was at the old grammar school in St Andrews Road, and it was in the summer, and there were students taking their GCEs, and the teachers had got permission for them to stop and pop out just to see Princess Margaret arrive, and they had to go back in and finish off their essay or whatever it was.
The scene that we were in was a shipbuilding scene. I remember a huge backcloth of a ship, strong enough to rest ladders against and for senior members of the cast to run up and down. Being a young chap, I had to pull a small cart loaded with timber with another lad, John Warren from Netherbury, and we had to come in and pull this cart right across the front of the stage. We had I think it was Bridport town fire engine, which was operated by about 4 men either side, pumping handles. No water, obviously, but we had to give the impression that we were pumping it. And then I believe there was a horse-drawn fire engine pulled in to take over.
Yeah, my mother was in the Elizabethan scene and had a much nicer costume than I did. I was quite envious of it. It was a bit more attractive and feminine, whereas mine was a bit... Yeah.
My husband produced one of the episodes of the pageant, and I appeared in 3 of them. First of all as an ancient Briton in animal skins or mock animal skins, then as an Elizabethan dancing a pavan. And finally, I was a Victorian, I think, or Edwardian, Victorian probably, being rescued from a burning tower by a fireman. I think it was more an experience for the fireman who rescued me than for me. But that was put in rather at the last minute, I think. And I was roped in to be the damsel in distress at the top of the tower. And I was introduced to the fireman who had to do the rescuing. And although I was slimmer and lighter then than I am now, I never was a lightweight. He took one look at me and, in horror, said, "Are you the person I've got to rescue?" Which wasn't very encouraging, just in case it was needed in real life. But nevertheless, it went off all right. Smoke rose from the tower and I appeared on top and screamed my head off, to such effect, apparently, that they could hear me all over Bridport, and they'd say, "Oh, there's Peggy Chapman Andrews screaming, it must be 9 o'clock, time for the news." And the fireman rushed up the ladder, slung me over his shoulder, and we rushed down again. Not quite so fast, but I was rescued.
Well, there was a lady of fairly ample proportions who did not have a prominent part, but she made sure she was always floating about in the middle with a long train. It was like a crinoline dress with a train, and she was always getting in our way. And I think it was probably the last performance. As we were pulling away, she went across our path, and the wheels of our cart went over the train of her dress, and there was a horrible ripping noise, and we just kept going. But I never heard anything about it, so I don't think we probably took the dress completely off.
Well, the torchlight procession. Oh yes, that was great fun, because I mean now they're a bit more common, but then you didn't really have torchlight processions. And I know we marched all the way along like West Street, along East Street, which there again I was just with people who'd been in the pageant, who were sort of keeping an eye on me, and I waved to my gran who was looking out of our window above the bakers, and I can't remember where we went after that. I suppose down the bottom of the town and dispersed, but somebody saw me home obviously, because everybody trusted everybody else then, and you were all quite safe. Different way of life completely. Yeah.
there was great camaraderie around, and late afternoon or early evening, say round about 6 o'clock, when we all started going down towards the pageant field, if you saw anyone in modern dress, they were conspicuous. Half the town was involved in the pageant, and they'd be walking through the streets in all sorts of dress. Ancient Britons in animal skins and medieval costume, Elizabethan, Carolean, Victorian. They'd all be making their way down to the field, and it was really quite extraordinary to see hardly a soul in modern dress walking through Bridport.
I don't think you probably get the same commitment today. I mean, once we started, nobody dropped out, which I think probably today they you know, they might go once and then they get fed up with it.
It was just more friendly, more intimate, more, I don't know, everybody sort of, as I said, knew everybody else, and it worked. Whereas now, I just can't see it happening. If they wanted to do it like they did this year, when all we ended up with was an import of jousters, and we just want the same. It wasn't Bridport. But then I'm a bit of an old fogey, I suppose, and I like Bridport and I remember Bridport. But now, it would just, I don't think it would work. I'd like to think it could, but I don't know that we could do the same again.